Radical Radio Collective.
Good afternoon, listeners. You're tuned into 4ZZZ 102.1 FM. This is Eco Radio, Australia's longest running peace and environment radio show.
Maybe.
We are taking over your middle of the day, middle of the week, endish of the month airwaves. My name is Dave. My pronouns are he, him.
My name is Zack, and my pronouns are he, they.
And I want to start off by acknowledging and paying my respects to the custodians on the country in which we broadcast. We're located in the city Mungangin, on Turrbal Yagara Yukabal land. I also want to acknowledge and pay my respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are listening in today. Our radio waves reach Cubby Cubby and Yinabara country in the north, Waka Waka country in the west. In the east, we pay our respects to the Quandamooka people, and down south we reach Commerry, Nagaragwa, Manjali, Wanjera, Burra, Yugambeh and Bunjalung countries. Thank you to No Idea for all the great ideas. I always enjoy that.
Yeah, I always enjoy the discussion on dinosaurs whenever they bring it up.
Yeah.
New Spinosaurus, always interesting.
New Spinosaurus just dropped?
Yeah,
Sick.
I think every sawfish within like a 2,000 kilometre radius shuddered at the same time, because I don't know if you've seen any paleo art of Spinosaurs, but they're usually thrashing around a sawfish. So
yeah, right.
Yeah,
okay. Well, today on the show, we are hanging out with Bryologist Andrew Franks. Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today in the studio.
My pleasure. It's great to be here. Long-time listener of Eco Radio.
Yeah, awesome. I first met you when you were working at the Queensland herbarium, and you took me for a walk around the forest to look at moss. That was one of my favourite interviews ever. I had such a good time learning about moss. This was back in 2022.
Yeah.
And today, in honour of you joining us on the show, I'd like to play that 3-part moss interview. So we've got about half an hour of moss talk today, at least.
Oh, half an hour's not long enough.
No, that's right. Also today, Callan from Workers' Power here on 4ZZZ went to a protest in Redland Bay to protect koalas from the planned development at Ormiston College, which we've covered for a while now. So if we have time for that, we can play a short update on how the campaign to protect koalas is going. But first, let's play a song. Let's get everyone in the mood. This is a song by Zeneca. It's called Native Gardenia, and you're listening to 4ZZZ. This is Eco Radio.
Have you been loitering around like a juvenile delinquent? Are you lacking purpose in your life? Subscribe to 4ZZZ and get some warm inner glow.
Please do get that warm inner glow. This is 4ZZZ. Specifically, this is Eco Radio. And today we're going to be talking about moss, because we've got Andrew Franks in the studio. Andrew is a bryologist, and I met him originally in 2022.
Yep.
And we had this chat about moss. And Andrew, you were just telling us that you discovered a new species of liverwort.
Yeah, that's right. I was out in far western Queensland in the Channel Country and was collecting a lot of the liverworts that were out at the time out there, because it was this ideal situations. They had storms go through, so this liverwort's called Rixia, the genus name, and there was this everywhere and anywhere. So there's a bryologist down in Canberra who's doing a revision of that genus, so I managed to grab anything I could and send it down to her, and lo and behold, a new species popped up, which we're in the process of naming at the moment. So yeah, watch this space. In about a year's time there should be a new Rixia species for Australia. So yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well, in this chat that we had a few years back now, we actually go into the differences between moss, liverwort and pennywort.
No, hornwort.
No, hogwort. Hornwort.
Hornwort. Yep.
Hornwort. Okay, well, let's get cracking. This is my chat with Andrew Franks from 2022.
Woohoo. Okay, we're at the Queensland Herbarium, which is the Centre for Science and Research on the ecosystems and species of plants and fungi, algae and lichens of Queensland. So essentially we're like a a plant museum, if you like. So we've got about over 900,000 dried plant specimens upstairs, the oldest of which was collected by Banks and Solander in 1769. So we've got a couple of hundred years worth of records of plant specimens being collected around Queensland, Australia, and around the world upstairs. Thank you.
Moss can be really overlooked. Everyone focuses on bush foods, maybe flowering plants. What makes moss special?
What makes moss special? Well, first off, yes, totally agree that it is an overlooked component of our plant diversity. And you may be surprised to know that the mosses and the moss-related plants, they're actually second in diversity after the flowering plants. So they've got more diversity than the ferns and the gymnosperms together. In Queensland we've got about 1,000 species of what's called bryophytes. So the term bryophyte refers to mosses, liverworts and hornworts. So we've got about 1,000 species of bryophytes in Queensland, about 600 species of moss. So that's a lot more than the number of gymnosperms, native gymnosperms or native ferns that we have. So it's a big component of our diversity, and it's a really overlooked part of our diversity as well, and very understudied. What makes it important? Depending on what ecosystem you're in, they can really affect the moisture balance of a forest. So things like the Antarctic beech forests up on the border ranges. If you've ever been there, like around O'Reilly's out at Bithongable, you'll see these massive trees that are just covered in this green fuzz on their trunks, which are mostly mosses and liverworts. So what happens is that they absorb moisture straight over their leaf surface, and they hold on to that moisture for a little bit. They use what they can in photosynthesis, but they slowly release that excess water back out into the environment, either as gaseous forms, so it can increase the humidity of those forests, or it can leach down the trunk as well, so it can transport nutrients down the trunk to plants that are around the base of those trees.
Oh, right. So the symbiosis it has with the trees it's living on?
Well, not truly symbiosis, but yeah, it's part of that ecosystem, like that network of species interacting together. So that they are an important component. They provide habitat for things that we don't look at as well, things like tardigrades and rotifers.
Oh, right.
So, if you get a nice patch of liverworts, for example, you might have a look and you might see rotifers swimming around in some of their structures. You might see tardigrades wandering around. I collected a moss from up near Mullaney the other day, and when I had a look in the packet a couple of weeks later, there was a velvet worm in there that was deceased, but I didn't see it when I collected that moss, so it walked out of the moss and died in the packet, unfortunately.
Right.
So they do provide that habitat. They also provide, it could be like a germination bed. Okay, I was speaking last night to a land care group actually, and a woman said, there was this patch of bryophytes on my property, and an orchid, a ground orchid was growing in the middle of it. And I went, okay, well, the seeds probably dropped into that patch, and there was the additional moisture and nutrients associated with the bryophytes that probably enabled that seed to germinate and grow. So they provided that habitat for that orchid to grow. So they do offer a lot of different components in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I suppose sometimes you can see a lot of moss growing on bare clay soil. Yep. Like I've seen it on sides of roads, yep. And like there's nothing else around it. So how does it come about?
Well, that's a good question, because they are one of the early organisms to occupy newly exposed bits of soil and land like that. So one of the ways that they reproduce is through spores. So they don't produce seeds. They don't have flowers like most of the plants around us. So they produce, one way they produce is by spores. They've got other ways that they reproduce, but spores are tiny. They can get sucked up into the atmosphere, and then there's spores in the air all around us that are just constantly raining down onto those surfaces. So if the surface is appropriate, the spore will germinate and your moss will grow. The other cool thing with mosses is that part of the moss plant can break off and if it lands on an appropriate substrate, it'll start growing.
Yeah, so vegetative.
Vegetative, yep. And a lot of them also have asexual reproductions in that they produce these little bits of tissue called gemi. And the gemi can splash out or break off, and basically if it lands on that appropriate substrate, it can grow into a new moss plant as well.
Wait, like a clone?
Yep. Yeah, exactly, like a clone. So it's these gemi are just undifferentiated pieces of tissue basically that they form on the edge of the leaves or in these specialized structures on the surface of a liverwort called a gemi cup, and if a raindrop comes down and knocks those and splashes them out, those gemi can grow into a new plant. So the bryophytes aren't hedging all their bets on sexual reproduction, because for spores to produce requires sexual reproduction. So they're also got these other mechanisms so they can persist in the landscape, either by breaking a bit off or having these asexual gemi.
Is that special in the plant world?
Yes, to have so many means of reproduction, I think it is pretty unique with the bryophytes. We can take cuttings off higher plants and strike them, but it's not as readily like the bryophytes exhibit when part of it can break off and form a new plant. So even a bird might come down and grab a moss off a plant, take it up and put it into its nest, and the moss will keep growing. So it can form a new population in that bird's nest.
So there was a lot of talk earlier this year about mould because of all the wet weather that we've been having, but I didn't hear any talk about moss. Are we going to be inundated by moss?
I wouldn't say we're going to be inundated, but I have definitely noticed a lot more moss around because we've had a run of good wet seasons. And so they're just taking advantage of the more moist conditions. So I was contacted by a gentleman who was a bit concerned that he had this, what he called a weed growing in his lawn, that he was concerned that this weed was going to take over. And when I looked at the photo, it was actually a moss. And when I looked at the photo closely, I basically said, look, the only native plant in that photo is the moss. Everything else is weedy. And I sort of had to explain very tactfully that you're seeing it more now because we've had all these wet months and it has expanded a little. But come the dry season, it'll get knocked back. So unfortunately, a lot of the queries I do get are people who are concerned about mosses they see in their lawns and think that it's going to overtake the grass. No, it's not. And unfortunately, these people will say, "Well, how do I kill it?" And you go, "Well, you don't have to kill it. It's never going to outgrow the grass. It's always going to be about 2 centimeters tall. You don't have to mow it. In fact, if they mow it, they're actually going to spread it because each part can break off and make a new plant." And there's some instances in North America and the States where people have actually pulled up their grass and laid down moss because moss doesn't need mowing. It'll grow to 2 or 3 centimeters tall, and that's it. It's not going to get to 20 centimeters tall or anything. So.
Yeah, it can be a big part of like Japanese gardens, for instance. Yeah, moss gardens and stuff. I mean, I think they're absolutely fantastic, beautiful.
So do I.
Should we be replacing our lawns with moss or?
Well, around Brisbane, we probably don't have the right conditions for that to occur. I think we need to be in probably a more moist and cooler environment. So unfortunately, no, I'd love to have a moss lawn, but the situations, it's probably not going to happen around here. And you did mention Japan, so the Japanese take mosses to a whole other level. There's shrines, moss shrines throughout Japan where the monks actually weed out grass that's popping up in amongst the moss lawns, and they have these temples devoted to moss. Think of a bonsai tree, so you get that mental picture of a bonsai tree in your mind, and what's at the base of there? It's usually a moss. So the moss gives that ancientness look to that bonsai as well. And in fact, moss is actually mentioned in the Japanese national anthem.
Is it?
Yes.
Wow.
So they take moss seriously over there.
Yeah, that is serious.
For your dose of news, current affairs, and analysis, tune in to 4ZZZ 102.1 FM, 12 to 1 p.m. daily. Only Human, Eco Radio, Paradigm Shift, Megahertz, and Brisbane Line, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturday. 4ZZZ 102.1 FM, People-Powered Radio.
Hey, welcome back. You're on 4ZZZ. This is Eco Radio. And we've been listening to an interview I did with Andrew Franks from 2022. Andrew's now in the studio with us. And we were just talking about Japanese moss gardens and how the Japanese people are attracted to moss a lot. So much so that it's in their national anthem.
Yeah, that's right. And, they regularly run moss tours. They'll have groups of people and give out magnifying glasses and go out and they'll be looking at walls with mosses on. And
yeah, right. Have you been over to explore the moss?
No, it's on my bucket list to go to. I also need to get over to New Zealand because that's another incredibly mossy area.
Is it really? Yeah, right.
South Island.
It's quite a temperate area.
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, there are a couple of places I want to get to. And Japan's just spans such an enormous climatic zone as well, from subtropical islands to right up to the snowy areas and everything. So they have a really large diversity of mosses and take them far more seriously than unfortunately we do here in Australia.
Here's a quick question: is there anywhere moss doesn't live?
Seawater, anywhere that's inundated with salt water. So it doesn't like getting salty areas.
Okay.
But it will occur on mangroves. So you may find them growing on mangrove leaves and things like that, which are in that maritime area zone, but not directly inundated by salt water. So there's some that are a bit resistant to a very rare inundation by salt water. But yeah, generally not in the oceans, but everywhere else, you'll find them in the deserts and down in Antarctica, Arctic regions.
Really?
Yep. So,
holy dooly.
I should also mention that I'm no longer with the Queensland Herbarium. So when this interview was taking place, I was. But I still got that passion for mosses and the little plants of the world.
Yeah, the little plants. Yeah. Part one was a walk through the herbarium. Part two here is our interview from 2022, where we walk through a bit of a forested area to look at moss. So let's get cracking. You're listening to 4ZZZ Eco Radio. When we're wanting to encourage moss in our gardens, what are the type of conditions that we need to make?
Okay. Well, there's a lot of parts of that question that I should address. So I often get asked about mosses in terrariums. Mm-hmm. Okay, so people like to have terrariums and try to propagate moss in there. The one thing you have to keep in the back of your mind is what was the moss growing on. Okay, so a lot of them are very substrate specific. So that means if it's growing on rock, it'll only grow on rock. So if you collect something off soil and want it to grow onto like rotting wood or a tree, it's not going to happen in most cases. So some of them are very, very substrate specific. So
okay, why is that?
Just the way that they've evolved. Something's evolved to be epiphytic, and so it'll always be epiphytic.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's even some that are specific to dung, like in the Northern Hemisphere. There's some that only occur on reindeer dung and nothing else. So if you're trying to propagate moss, you have to really keep in mind what it was actually growing on. Even to the point where, if you collect it off a rock that's basic rather than acidic, it's a rock that you want it to grow on, the same.
Right, yeah.
So something that likes calcareous rocks, for example, might grow really well on concrete or something like that. In terms of growing it in the garden, I wouldn't be using town water for one thing, because I've tried to expand the mosses in my garden, and in dry times was watering with town water, and a lot of them are quite sensitive to that.
Right.
Which I can talk about later as well. And the other thing is that you have to keep them moist but not overly wet, so that most of the mosses you don't have to have them with water. They've got this fantastic mechanism where they've adapted to drying out, and that desiccation tolerance is dependent on what ecosystem that your moss comes from. So they're what's classed as non-vascular, so they don't have a vascular system. So in our bodies we've got veins and arteries to move blood around. In plants, in a lot of terrestrial plants, they've got the equivalent is called xylem and phloem. So the xylem moves water around, the phloem moves nutrients around. The bryophytes don't have a vascular system, so all the moisture they absorb straight over the leaf surface. What happens is they there might be a heavy dew or a rain shower. The water runs into the leaf, gets sucked up into the cells. They start using that water for photosynthesis. What they can't use, they're losing back to the environment. So if you can picture a leaf and it's full of all these little plant cells, so imagine those little plant cells are like water balloons, got no water in, they're pretty floppy. If you fill each one of those up, they start to expand. So what you find is you've got all these cells inside your moss leaf that all of a sudden are filled with water, and it pushes all the leaf surface out. So the moss plant's got the maximum available surface area for photosynthesis while it's got water. And as it's losing water back to the environment, those cells in the leaf are getting smaller, and what happens, the leaves start to close up. And then those leaves might actually start to curl around the plant. So they're really quite remarkable plants that they can dry out and wait until they have that moisture back into their leaves.
Does that mean that there's mosses in arid regions of Australia?
Yep, definitely. So mosses occur everywhere, except they don't like seawater. Okay, so every other ecosystem you can think of, you find moss. So in the deserts, there'll be species out there that have adapted to, basically being dried out for months or years and waiting until there's a rain shower.
Wow.
So they can quickly open up, do their photosynthesis, do their reproduction, and then shut down and wait again. So they're really quite remarkable. I was actually around the Condamine area a few years ago doing some surveys there, and it was in late January, and they'd had no rain for about 3 or 4 months, and the temperatures, daily temperatures were getting up to about high 30s, low 40s every day. So it was baking hot and no moisture. And I found this liverwort in this gully, and it was bleached white, and I thought, it's dead. Nothing could have withstand these temperatures and no water for this long. So I dug it up and I sent it to a colleague of mine down in Canberra who was studying that particular group of liverworts, and I got an email when she got it back, when she got that package, and she said, I got your liverwort today, I put water on it and it greened up straight away. And I went, oh my God, this is amazing. I said, I thought it was dead because of these conditions, and I explained what this moss had been growing under, this liverwort had been growing under for months. And no, it was just sitting there waiting until it had moisture on it. So yeah, really quite remarkable.
And even waiting while it was in transit, in a package, no sunlight, whatever conditions it was. That's remarkable.
Yep, and that's why they're a great group of plants to study, because I can go out, I can collect them, I can stick them into a little packet like this. So it's just an A4 folded envelope. So I just collect the moss straight into that. When I get back to wherever I'm staying or at home, I'll just stand them up like little tents to dry out. But the cool thing is, I might not be able to look at that moss for a couple of months. Maybe 6 months later, I can pull it out of its envelope, add water, the leaves will open up, it'll be all greening up again and comes back to life. Now that doesn't mean that, we've got specimens here of moss that were collected in the 1800s. It doesn't mean that they're still alive. They're well and truly dead.
They still have a lifespan. They're not immortal. Okay.
Right. Yeah. However, as I explained before, with the cells swelling up and pushing the leaves out, I can pull out a specimen that was collected in 1880, for example, out of the collection, add water, and the leaves will open up because it's the cells absorbing that water and expanding and forcing the leaves out.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
So the plant's well and truly dead, but it still goes through that motion because the cells swelling up.
Yeah, like when you put salt on a dead snail or frog's legs or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah. So does that mean that with climate change there are no threats to mosses? We see a lot of threats to other plant species, a lot of biodiversity.
Yeah.
But moss being so hardy, does that mean that they are safe?
No, it doesn't mean that they're safe. We know that there's some moss species up in the wet tropics that are only occurring on the highest peaks, right up the top. So they've adapted to those high elevation wet areas, and with climate change, that temperature incline or whatever is going to move up, and so the conditions of those higher peaks are going to change. So there is the potential that some of those high elevation mosses could disappear from Australia, definitely.
That's up in the Atherton tablelands.
Yeah, like on Mount Lewis, on Mount Bartlefraya, Woonaroo, yeah, any of those mountains.
So what does that mean for the ecological community there?
Well, it means it could change quite dramatically. With my honours study, I actually looked at the bryophyte flora on the Antarctic beech forest, the Nothofagus forest, and they're probably are prone to changing as well. So at the moment, the Antarctic beech forests are persisting on those higher peaks on the border ranges, but with climate change, what I suspect is going to happen is that you'll find that some of the more subtropical elements of rainforests are going to start invading into these Antarctic beech forests, and so it probably alters the microclimate underneath the canopy as well, and you may find that some of the species of moss that usually occur in those forests might start disappearing.
These Antarctic, like prehistoric forests are amazing systems.
Yeah.
So could we go see some moss?
Yeah. Do you want to look in the packets, or do you want to look them outside?
Outside, the living ones? Yep. So even you've been studying this for years.
Yep.
You still get excited by new mosses to you?
Oh, yes. I get excited by mosses, and new ones in particular. I definitely like a challenge when I'm trying to ID things. But some of them, when you put them underneath the microscope, they're just beautiful, you know, like to identify a moss adequately, you really need to prepare a microscope slide. So you have to remove leaves and stick it on a microscope slide and look underneath a microscope, a compound microscope. But that really opens up the true beauty. You can see like the cells, how the cells in the leaf, how they look like, if they're hexagonal or if they're linear and things like that. You can see these teeth on the margins of the leaves that you just can't pick up with a magnifying glass. And I still get a buzz when, you know, I put something underneath the microscope and then start to look down and see this amazing beauty that's this you just don't see. And so, I do go around and give talks to different community groups about bryophytes and mosses, and the whole thing is like just making them aware that, you know, just go slowly, like in the forests, you know, take a hand lens or a magnifying glass with you and look at the moss, because, you know, they're amazing plants to look at, and most people will just walk past and just see the green fuzz on a tree trunk. But if you stop and pause and have a close look at it, you might be really amazed at what you see.
So if some of our listeners do go for a walk through the bush, take a magnifying glass, stop and look at the moss, how could they articulate what they're looking at?
Well, I guess the main thing that people want to distinguish is if they're looking at a moss or a liverwort. So the liverworts have two divisions. One's called the thalloid liverworts or thallose liverworts. The other one's leafy liverworts. So the leafy liverworts kind of look like moss. So I often get the question, like, how do you tell the difference between a moss and a leafy liverwort? So generally, if you're looking at a moss plant and the leaves are spirally arranged around the stem, so forms like a little rosette or something, that's definitely a moss, because the leafy liverworts don't do that.
Okay.
The other thing is that if you're looking at a plant that you think might be a moss, if it's got a costa on the leaf or a midvein on the leaf, it's definitely a moss, because the leafy liverworts don't have that.
Yeah, right.
So there's a couple of little things people can keep an eye out for that. So with the leafy liverworts, the leaves are actually arranged on either side of the stem, but with the mosses, they tend to be spirally arranged. Now, there are some mosses that have their leaves on either side of the stem.
Just to confuse us.
Just to confuse you, but fortunately, they have a midvein, a costa,
right.
which the leafy liverworts don't. So, yeah, if you do have something with leaves on either side and it's got a midvein or a costa, it's definitely a moss.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go down and have a look.
Okay, cool.
So we'll go down to the rainforest garden.
Okay, cool.
I often say that, you know, you don't have to. You can walk down the Queen Street Mall and you'll find moss growing in the cracks of the pavers in the mall. So they're everywhere. You just have to have your eye in. And I guess because I look at mosses a lot, they'll pop out to me probably more than the average person. So, I just noticed that log, the stump over there with
Oh, yeah.
all the moss growing on the base of it.
Oh, yeah, that's a beauty.
Let's go and have a look.
Oh.
All right, so this one is Racopilum, and we're quite fortunate because it's actually got sporophytes on there. So the sporophytes are the spore-producing part of the plant. Now, for these to occur is indicating that sexual reproduction has happened. So obviously there's a male and a female plant around there, and the sperms fertilise the egg, and we've got the sporophytes developed on there now. So the sporophytes are on this little stem, and at the end it's like a little cup, and then the little cup's got a cover on the top of it which falls off, and that'll expose the inside of the capsule for the spores to be released.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I can see these like wrinkles on the cup,
Yeah.
and then there's a little, I don't know, like a little top to it with a handle.
A little cap.
Cap, yeah, just like you got on like a gum leaf, gum nut.
Yeah, and it's actually called an operculum, which is what the term is for the top of the gum nut as well.
Oh, okay.
How about the moss plant?
I guess I would say that they're like tiny ferns.
Yep. Some of them really do look like little ferns.
Yeah.
This one here, you'll see that the leaves are arranged on either side of the stem, and they have that really fine point on the leaf as well.
Yeah.
And then you'll see that, so you've got the leaves on either side, but you also have a leaf down the middle that's lying flat on the stem as well. But they've got that mid vein on the leaf, so it's definitely a moss, and they've got that really nice point to the leaf as well.
Yeah, I suppose they're like really ratty feathers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what is this one?
That one's Racopilum cuspidarium. So it's probably one of the easier ones to recognise. I've got it growing in my backyard at home. And they're just loving it at the moment. Like, look at all those sporophytes just here. Like, not good for radio, but there's a lot. And they're sticking up, and you can, see the moisture that's coming off on my hands.
Yeah, they've caught these the droplets, and they're just holding onto the droplets. It hasn't rained here all day, I don't think.
Nope.
And they're just holding onto these droplets of water.
Yeah, so if you get a nice patch as well, you should be able to just press your hand lightly on it, and you can see the moisture coming out of that patch of moss.
Yeah.
And they're just quite beautiful. I mentioned before about how they can be sensitive to like town water, the chemicals in town water, and so they have used bryophytes and mosses as bioindicators. So changes in the air quality or the water quality, if it's an aquatic one, the moss is like the canary in the coal mine. So it'll be the plant that responds before any other plant.
Right.
So if there's significant changes in the air quality, you might find the mosses start to die before the rest of the plants around it die. So for a tree, it might take years for it to die, but the mosses will be generally pretty quick when there's a change in those conditions.
Are people using them for that?
In the Northern Hemisphere, they are using a lot of mosses for bioindicators and assessing air quality, and they found that some are more susceptible to things like the sulfur dioxide content in the air, for example. They are being used, but not so much in Australia. We don't have many people in Australia studying mosses, unfortunately. So
yeah, right. How many different species do we have?
Yep. So in Queensland, we've got about 600 species of moss. We've got about it's around 390 species of liverwort and around a dozen species of hornwort. So we don't have a lot of diversity in hornworts. In fact, worldwide there's only 150 species of hornwort, so it's a very doesn't have a lot of diversity. Basically, what the current thinking is that a bryophyte or a bryophyte-like plant were the first plants to make the transition from an aquatic ecosystem to start colonising land.
Okay.
Back in the Ordovician period, about 470 million years ago.
Yeah.
So when Earth formed and everything, and we had these continents, they were largely devoid of any life. But the current thinking is that it was a bryophyte or bryophyte-like plant that made that first transition from an aquatic system, a freshwater system, to start colonising land. And they think that those early bryophytes were so successful for millions of years that they actually altered the atmospheric oxygen content to such an extent that other things could transition out of water onto land. So without the mosses, we might not be here having this conversation.
Oh, there's such a fascinating plant there.
They are. They're the best.
Thanks so much for doing this, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no worries.
You're listening to Eco Radio, the radio of the future.
You are listening to Eco Radio, the radio of the future.
Thank you,
small child. All right. This is Eco Radio. We just heard then from Coastal Driftwood Fever, and we'd been playing a 3-part interview I did with Andrew Franks all the way back in 2022. And Andrew is in the studio with us now. Andrew, thank you so much for coming into the studio, and thank you so much for that interview in 2022.
Oh, my pleasure. Look, always love introducing that whole microscopic world to people. It just opens up a whole new experience to a lot of people. They just will walk past these areas and not give it a closer look. So just getting people to go slowly and appreciate it a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. Every time I pass a mossy rock now, I have to place my hand on it, feel how soft it is, and and take a moment to appreciate it.
My work here is done.
Well, if you like our work here at 4ZZZ, then you can become part of the family. We are a subscriber-based radio station. So if you are into that, head to 4zzz.org.au/support, and you can go in the running to win a White Lies Brewing drinks package. That's White Lies Brewing down in Sumner.
And you also get a Yeasty Boys gift voucher, which is worth $50 for pizza.
All right. So we're going to finish off the show now with a thing I like to call the Bushcare Roundup. It goes a little something like this.
It's a Bushcare Roundup. They've been pulling out weeds and then they put in trees. It's the Bushcare Roundup.
Zack, can you kick us off? What is happening on Saturday?
So on Saturday the 28th at 8 a.m, there is the Our Beaches and Waterways Community Dune Planting Day, and that one is at Mill Street in Bilinga from 9 till 11:30 a.m. There is the Wongam Koala Catchment Care Day. That one is on the corner of Blue Hills Drive and Birdsong Place in Bunya from 9 till 12. There is the Bulimba Creek Cleanup, and that one is at Preston Road Park in Carindale. Then from 2 till 5 p.m. there is a February Working Bee at 114 Nicholson Street, Greenslopes. And finally at 4 p.m. there is the Victoria Park Has a Black History, and that one is at Ibis Island in Herston.
And happening on Sunday, Andrew?
8 o'clock to 10 o'clock on the Gold Coast Community Beach Cleans for Conservation, and that's happening down at Justin's Park, Burleigh Heads. At the same time, 8 to 10, clean up Tincher Timber wetlands at the 321 Wampa Road, Bald Hills.
And happening on Tuesday the 3rd at 5:30, you can go to the Biodiversity Collage, Brisbane. That's People for Nature are putting that on. That's at 315 Brunswick Street, Fortitude Valley. And that's all the time we've got. Let's send you across to the coolest quokka on radio, Jordan with Sonic Alien. They're going to be talking to Dr. Shaw's Unusual Practice and Kisses.
Not the one with Gene Simmons in it.
No.
This has an additional ES to it.
Yeah, just to confuse you all. All right, you've been listening to 4ZZZ Eco Radio.
4ZZZ. Eco Radio. Radical Radio Collective.
4ZZZ.